Okay guys, based off the success of our last video about Game of Thrones probably 2 weeks ago or so, I decided to talk about what I want to see out of potential Game of Thrones spin-offs, the spin-off already, House of the Dragon, and what's set to come and what I hope comes in the next few years in multiple shows that they already have on the horizon. First of all, you have House of the Dragon, which, me personally, I think it's a great show. I think the first season was magnificent. I think the second season was that builder season that you kind of expected. There were some big things, like, I mean, that battle, and I think it's episode 4 was unreal. I think it's ranked one of the top Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon episodes. I think it's like a 9.7, which is unreal. It's a great episode. But other than that, throughout the season, it was kind of builder, which I'm fine with as long as the payoff in season 3, which, if you don't know, spoilers ahead, there is a lot of deaths coming up, a lot of deaths of dragons, some really big battles. The only thing with House of the Dragon that I'm a little reluctant about, but also at the same time kind of excited about, is to see how they kind of manage the big battles and not really pushing too much in season 3, because I'm pretty sure they do have a season 4, so you don't want all of that to be in season 3 and then have the aftermath in season 4, and then you kind of just are like, wow, that was a lot in season 3, and then you're gonna go into season 4 kind of like, oh, like they're just tying stuff together, which again, that's gonna happen. That's how any TV show is. You're gonna tie things together in the end. It just depends on how they do it. I think with this writing staff and how they keep George R.R. Martin in the loop on this show, I think it'll be perfectly fine. I think when you look at it, it's not like Game of Thrones where the creators were already basically on the way out. They have this managed, they have this planned, which is exciting to see. They have an actual plan for where they're going. And the big thing is that not a lot of people talk about is, like, this stuff's already written. You know, the hard part about Game of Thrones is, like, there's 2 books still not out, which is one of my big complaints. And again, George R.R. Martin has a long, writing period, but now it's kind of gotten to the point where it's like, is it ever going to come out? And he has another book, and he is in his old age. You don't even know. You don't even know if these books are going to come out at this point. But at least you have what it's based off of written already, so the creators of the show can kind of go off of that. Another thing we have to look forward to, though, is actually, I'm very excited for, is the Sir Duncan the Tall and the Egg show, which is supposed to come out this year. It's supposed to come out in the summer. It hasn't had a trailer yet. I kind of expect a trailer probably in the next month or 2, but the book in the I think it's 3 different little books about him, great, and I think they have a lot to cover in that series and in what can come up. I mean, you have all the kind of looking at a little more of the downfall of the Targaryens. You have the Blackfire Rebellion you can touch on, which I'm very excited about. I think seeing, like, the Targaryen bastards rise up and really, I want to see Daemon Blackfire, which is a lot of people's favorite character. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see them go deeper on Bloodraven, which, again, like they did in Game of Thrones, and people didn't really understand that, the Brendan Rivers thing. But he is one of the Targaryen bastards. He had, special powers as the Three-Eyed Raven. And he was a big deal, and I think it's kind of a way to tie it back to Game of Thrones, if that makes sense a little bit, because there wasn't a lot of clarification if you didn't read the books. There wasn't a lot of why he's there, what the whole situation is with him, and how he was like a super big deal. I mean, he was the hand of the king at one point. He, was very big in politics in King's Landing at the time with the Targaryens. He was looked at kind of as the only Targaryen bastard to really side with the Targaryens So that would be interesting. And seeing, which is one of my favorite characters, is Maester Aemon, that he will be in the series, and it'll be a younger Maester Aemon, seeing his relationship with Egg, which they touch on a little bit in Game of Thrones. And I think it'll just overall be a great tie-in together, tie in some years. It'll be I think it's 100 years before Game of Thrones and 100 years before House of the Dragon. So it'll tie in a lot of things. And also, Game of Thrones also got cleared, no one knows what it is, but to make a movie, which I'm super excited about because fingers crossed, I hope it's a Robert's Rebellion movie. I think, a 2.5 hour screen time on Robert's Rebellion would be great. You can tie in so many things. You can tie in all the Game of Thrones things, and then it kind of wraps in, because that's the hard part about Game of Thrones. I mean, I don't think it's super hard, but I think it's hard to navigate spoilers when you're trying to look up stuff in the books when watching the show. For me, I was kind of fine with it at the time that I was watching it. I was watching it when it was coming out, but friends that I've had that have watched it, it's been hard to really navigate talking to them and then telling them to look things up, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I didn't know that, and it's a spoiler. So that's the hard part. I think having a movie to be able to go with the TV show before, because Robert's Rebellion is the whole setup basically to Game of Thrones. I mean, and then it's the spin-off. I mean, it'd be great because then you have Sir Duncan the Tall, and then into Robert's Rebellion, you have a lot of things that you can wrap together. I think it's something that they can really, dig into, and I think they have so much stuff with a 2.5 hour movie, and they don't have to spend so much. I mean, it's going to be a huge budget for a movie, but it's not going to be like a TV show where they were spending so much money for hour-long episodes. I mean, you have 2.5 hours, you just got to figure out how to wrap everything into each other. I mean, they have a lot of canceled shows. I know they have some animated shows that are supposed to come out. I think it's the 10,000 Ships one and the Nymeria one. Could be totally wrong about that, but that was the rumors at one point in time. And also, they had the Jon Snow spinoff, which Kit Harington already said is kind of, stuck in the mud. They kind of stopped talking about it. And I think that really comes down to, he was frustrated with the end of Game of Thrones, but also, where do you go after that shit show of an ending? Especially with Jon Snow. I mean, Jon Snow was the best character and then had a shit show of an ending. He just got cast off to the fucking wall. So I think my hopes, and I don't see this happening, but my hopes is someday they do an animated portion of after season 6 for Game of Thrones. And it's what George R.R. Martin wants to happen, and new directors. And that makes it to where you don't have to have the actors, because the actors were done. Mentally, they were drained. You could tell that they were done with it. And I think it gives them an out. I think if they want to be involved in it, they can still use their voice and do that. But also, it allows them to continue the story and make it what it should have been. You can make it multiple seasons, because then realistically, it's kind of a separate show at that point. It gives you a lot of room to grow. But overall, guys, I would like to hear what you guys want to see in the comments. I will be touching on later on a whole House of the Dragon episode, as well as down the road with Sir Duncan the Tall. But really, I wanted to go over what I think should happen in the Game of Thrones universe, and what, possibly could change going forward. Again, I would like to see what you guys want to see, and just leave them in the comments, and I'll see you guys.